My name is Leora Sinclair, and if you told me a year ago I'd be sitting here alone at the edge of the fairway, heart still hammering from adrenaline, I would have laughed at you. Laughter would have been the only thing pumping through me then. Back then, I believed in second chances, maybe even third or fourth when it came to people. I believed that if you offered someone a hand, they'd eventually take it. If you lent them $1, they'd return it. I never expected that a group of well-to-do acquaintances could turn on me so fast, dismiss me so coldly, or cut me out of their exclusive circle without a second thought. And I certainly never imagined they would regret it as much as they did. The country club was the epicenter of every whispered aspiration and celebrated success in our town of Aldridge. Its red brick facade loomed like a beacon of prestige every time I drove by, the manicured lawns and neatly trimmed hedges visible through wrought iron gates. For decades, membership there was a rite of passage, a golden ticket into a world of power lunches, charity galas, and meticulously organized tennis doubles. Adults mentioned it in conversations with the reverence one would reserve for an Ivy League diploma. As a kid, I watched golfers in pastel polos drift across the lawns like they owned the place. And I dreamed of that powdered sugar life. That dream became more than a child's fancy when my grandmother, Eleanor Sinclair, passed away and left me a letter, instead of an heirloom brooch or a string of pearls. In her precise handwriting, she instructed me to take the inheritance she had set aside, enough for a full membership at Aldridge, and secure my foothold in society. She wanted me to have the security she'd never had, to build connections she'd always envied. I wanted to honor her memory, so I applied. It was easier than I thought. The membership committee, all polished men and women in navy blazers, asked a handful of questions about my career, my budding architecture firm, and my financial stability, and within 6 weeks, I received the call. I'd made it. At 27, I was the youngest new member in a decade. I stashed the letter of acceptance in the leather portfolio I carried to every important meeting, as though it were a patent pending for my own success. My early weeks were bliss. I played my first round of golf under the gentle guidance of Ambassador Caldwell, a friend of my grandmother's who insisted that good posture and a proper swing were signs of breeding. We drank iced tea between holes, and I laughed when he called my driver a rough diamond. Soon I could eclipse his shot. I didn't brag, just smiled politely, but inside I felt a thrill. It felt like I belonged. The clubhouse was a cathedral of mahogany paneling and crystal chandeliers. I knew most new members simply huddled in the lounge, chatting about stock portfolios or the latest real estate deals. But I wanted more. On crisp Thursday mornings, I strolled into the fitness room for a Pilates session, and on Fridays, I sat down for the formal luncheon, napkin in lap, glass of Chardonnay waiting. Then I met them, the quartet of senior members who'd become my nearest allies. There was Vivian Hartford, the philanthropist whose smile was as gleaming as the diamonds on her ears. Declan Rhodes, a real estate mogul with an easy laugh and the financial sway to match. Sophie Albright, a lawyer whose sharp tongue concealed a surprisingly tender heart. And Mason Quinn, the retired judge who still held court at every dinner party. I thought we clicked. I brought fresh design ideas for the renovation of the ladies' locker room. They laughed at my jokes. They invited me to join their doubles team. Over time, we became the foursome everyone noticed. When it came time for the club's annual charity gala, a black tie affair where the rich and titled raised funds for the local hospital, I underwrote one of the main events. I donated generously, fully expecting a mention in the program next to my grandmother's legacy. But the program came out without my name. My donation was lumped into an anonymous block. I laughed it off when Sophie whispered an apology. It was an oversight, just a printing error. But I saw Vivian's eyes, calculated, cool. I brushed it off. By spring, I was hosting garden teas on the veranda, designing custom floral arrangements alongside the event planners, impressing nearly everyone. I thought my place was secure. Then came the country club's expansion fund. They wanted to build a state-of-the-art spa, and every member was encouraged to contribute. I'd taken Sabrina, the head planner, aside to discuss my ideas for a Mediterranean-inspired courtyard. Sabrina loved them and said she'd put me at the top of the list. The night the pledge deadline passed, I sat down to write my check, but the email came first. Fellow member, thank you for your interest. Unfortunately, we have reached our limit on platinum donors. We look forward to your involvement in future projects. No signature. Just that, something stung in my chest. An empty pit. I stared at the screen long after the email buzzer had cut off. My thoughts flooded back to every generous gesture I'd made for them. The gala, the lunch and desserts, the holiday toy drive. None of it meant enough for them to want me in their inner circle. I realized then how fragile membership truly was. I confronted Sophie at our next tennis match. The sun had just broken through low clouds, spotlighting the clay courts. She returned my serve, paused, then wiped her brow. You're overreacting, Leora, she said, eyes on the ball. The spa fund was oversubscribed by 50 grand. Plenty of people were left off. You're not special. Special. The word echoed in my mind. I studied her that afternoon. The way her jaw set, how she barely met my eye. I thought about Vivian's silence when I raised the topic. Declan's awkward cough. Mason's polite nod. Their friendship felt like a facade, a delicate veneer waiting to crack. I needed to remind them that I was more than an extra name on the membership roster. I would prove my worth, so I devised a plan. I knew the club's board would meet next month, and membership dues were due right after. Everyone expected their annual billing to go out automatically, with members begrudgingly writing checks or setting up autopay. No drama, no announcements, quiet compliance. But I had access to the billing office, through the plans department. In auditing my files for the Courtyard proposal, I'd noticed how they processed payments. I'd studied their software, spoken to the assistant treasurer more often than she realized. I could intercept the list. And on the eve of billing, I would make a change that would shake the foundation of Aldridge Club's social hierarchy. The night before, I sat at my laptop with a glass of Merlot, adrenaline humming in my veins. Every keystroke felt like a countdown. I navigated to the payments portal and hovered over the Excel upload button. My heart pounded as I opened the spreadsheet I'd prepared. A single line had been altered. The membership number for Vivian Hartford, and only Vivian Hartford, had been marked as cancelled. No dues, no privileges. Her name would vanish as if she'd resigned in disgrace. I saved the spreadsheet and exhaled. Tomorrow morning, they'd see what real power looked like. Tomorrow, they'd learn that I wasn't invisible. I shut the lid of my laptop and leaned back, watching the city lights of Aldridge twinkle through the window. It felt like I'd just pressed the detonator. .. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. The sun had barely crept over the horizon when I arrived at the club. Dew still clung to the grass, and the gates were locked. I smiled to myself and tapped my member card. A green light. I pushed the heavy gate open and drove down the winding lane toward the parking lot. Inside, the hush of morning greeted me. A single attendant stood by the front desk, polishing the silver nameplate. I dropped my bag in the car and made my way to the billing office. It was 10 minutes before the email hit their inboxes. I was perched on a filing cabinet, feet dangling, fists clenched like tiny pistons ready to fire. Then, the ping. I heard the assistant treasurer gasp. I saw her face blanch as she read the message. "Vivian's cancelled," she whispered. I pressed my hand to my heart as if I were the one in shock. What happened next would ripple through these halls like a tidal wave. I slid off the cabinet and turned to leave before anyone could see me, but I lingered just long enough to glimpse the panic in the office. That's when I knew I'd done it. And that's when I realized there was no turning back. Cliffhanger. I never expected to run into Vivian herself back in the locker room, and her eyes were burning with a fury I'd never seen before. I froze when I saw her. Vivian Hartford stood in front of the mirror in the women's locker room, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the edge of the marble sink. She looked different than she had at the galas and charity brunches. Gone was the icy, untouchable grace she wore like a diamond brooch. Instead, she was raw, her eyes wide and red around the edges, her mouth a thin, pale line. Her gaze flicked up, and when it landed on me, something inside my stomach flipped like a dying fish. "Leora!" Her voice cracked on my name. It sounded like a threat and a plea all at once. I thought I'd prepared myself for this moment. I'd imagined every possible reaction. Confusion, polite indifference, maybe a scathing comment about oversight or some clerical error. But this vulnerable, cornered version of Vivian stole the wind right out of me. She turned, and the flicker of desperation vanished under a tidal wave of rage. She stepped forward, heels clicking on the tiled floor. I stood my ground, my gym bag slipping off my shoulder and landing with a dull thud. "What did you do?" she hissed, her eyes narrowing. "Don't you dare lie to me, Leora." The name sounded foreign when she said it. I'd heard her say it so many times in that musical, performative lilt, always accompanied by a laugh or a conspiratorial wink. Now it was a dagger. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said carefully. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Vivian laughed, a bitter, humorless bark that echoed off the marble walls. She ran her fingers through her hair, messing up the sleek bun she always wore like a crown. "Don't insult me. I know exactly what you did." I glanced at the locker room door. It was shut, but the quiet hum of voices outside reminded me that this was not the place to have this conversation. I bent down to pick up my bag, hoping she'd take the hint and storm off to unleash her fury somewhere else. But Vivian didn't move. She stepped closer, blocking my path. "I brought you into this circle," she spat, her breath warm and sharp with stale coffee. "I vouched for you when others said you were too young, too new, and this is how you repay me? By embarrassing me?" I felt something inside me shift, hardening like cooling glass. "You brought me in because you needed fresh money," I shot back before I could stop myself. "You needed new blood. You don't get to pretend this was charity." Her eyes flashed. "You think you understand how this works? You think a few donations make you one of us? You are disposable, Leora. We all are. But you—" She stopped herself, catching the tail of her tongue between her teeth. I could almost see the calculation happening behind her eyes. How much could she threaten? How much could she lose? "I didn't do anything," I said, my voice low. "If there's been some administrative issue, maybe you should speak to the treasurer." Vivian's lip curled. She looked like she wanted to slap me. For a heartbeat, I thought she might. But then she straightened her blouse, smoothed her hair, and turned back to the mirror. "This isn't over," she whispered to my reflection, and then she was gone. Her perfume lingered in the air like poison. ... The fallout was immediate. By the time I stepped onto the patio, the rumors were already circulating. I caught snippets of conversation. Vivian's membership. Some glitch, surely. She's furious. Heads will roll. It was delicious and terrifying all at once. I sat at the far edge of the terrace, ordering a cappuccino I barely touched, as I watched the morning unfold like a soap opera. I froze when I saw her. Vivian Hartford stood in front of the mirror in the women's locker room, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the edge of the marble sink. She looked different than she had at the galas and charity brunches. Gone was the icy, untouchable grace she wore like a diamond brooch. Instead, she was raw, her eyes wide and red around the edges, her mouth a thin, pale line. Her gaze flicked up, and when it landed on me, something inside my stomach flipped like a dying fish. "Leora." Her voice cracked on my name. It sounded like a threat and a plea all at once. I thought I'd prepared myself for this moment. I'd imagined every possible reaction. Confusion, polite indifference, maybe a scathing comment about oversight, or some clerical error. But this vulnerable, cornered version of Vivian stole the wind right out of me. She turned, and the flicker of desperation vanished under a tidal wave of rage. She stepped forward, heels clicking on the tiled floor. I stood my ground, my gym bag slipping off my shoulder and landing with a dull thud. "What did you do?" she hissed, her eyes narrowing. "Don't you dare lie to me, Leora." The name sounded foreign when she said it. I'd heard her say it so many times in that musical, performative lilt, always accompanied by a laugh or a conspiratorial wink. Now it was a dagger. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said carefully. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Vivian laughed, a bitter, humorless bark that echoed off the marble walls. She ran her fingers through her hair, messing up the sleek bun she always wore like a crown. "Don't insult me. I know exactly what you did." I glanced at the locker room door. It was shut, but the quiet hum of voices outside reminded me that this was not the place to have this conversation. I bent down to pick up my bag, hoping she'd take the hint and storm off to unleash her fury somewhere else. But Vivian didn't move. She stepped closer, blocking my path. "I brought you into this circle," she spat, her breath warm and sharp with stale coffee. "I vouched for you when others said you were too young, too new. And this is how you repay me? By embarrassing me?" I felt something inside me shift, hardening like cooling glass. "You brought me in because you needed fresh money," I shot back before I could stop myself. "You needed new blood. You don't get to pretend this was charity." Her eyes flashed. "You think you understand how this works? You think a few donations make you one of us? You are disposable, Leora. We all are. But you—" She stopped herself, catching the tail of her tongue between her teeth. I could almost see the calculation happening behind her eyes. How much could she threaten? How much could she lose? "I didn't do anything," I said, my voice low. "If there's been some administrative issue, maybe you should speak to the treasurer." Vivian's lip curled. She looked like she wanted to slap me. For a heartbeat, I thought she might. But then she straightened her blouse, smoothed her hair, and turned back to the mirror. "This isn't over," she whispered to my reflection, and then she was gone. Her perfume lingered in the air like poison. ... The fallout was immediate. By the time I stepped onto the patio, the rumors were already circulating. I caught snippets of conversation. Vivian's membership. Some glitch, surely. She's furious. Heads will roll. It was delicious and terrifying all at once. I sat at the far edge of the terrace, ordering a cappuccino I barely touched as I watched the morning unfold like a soap opera. I set the tray down on the sideboard, careful not to make a sound. I leaned closer, pretending to rearrange the cups. Sophie's voice drifted over. "It's sabotage, plain and simple. If we don't find out who did it, we're next." Declan's eyes flicked up, catching mine in the reflection of the glass cabinet. For a moment, I wondered if he knew. If he could see right through my carefully arranged mask. But he looked away, shaking his head. "We need to run a full audit. Every membership, every payment. No one's safe until we figure this out." I slipped out of the room before they could see the smile tugging at my lips. ... Back in the parking lot, I sat in my car, heart pounding. I knew the audit would come. I'd counted on it. I hadn't left a trail, not a real one anyway. But there was a bigger game at play now, one that required more than just a single strike. I needed allies. People who had their own grudges, their own secrets to protect. People who'd benefit if the old guard at Aldridge fell. I made my list that night. 5 names. People the board overlooked or underestimated. The event planner they shortchanged on bonuses. The head chef whose recipes were stolen and passed off as the manager's genius. The junior golf pro who'd been denied a promotion because he didn't have the right family name. People like me, outsiders pretending to belong. I reached out quietly. Coffee here, a shared cigarette on the back patio there. It wasn't hard to get them talking. It was even easier to get them dreaming. "What if you didn't have to scrape for scraps?" I asked the chef one evening, our breath fogging in the cold night air. "What if you could run this place the way it should be run?" He laughed, bitter and sharp. "They'd never let me." But what if they didn't have a choice? I saw the spark in his eyes. The same spark I saw in the golf pro, in the event planner, in the groundskeeper, who'd been told for years he wasn't presentable enough to work the front gates. One by one, they leaned in, hungry for a taste of rebellion. My next move had to be bigger. Canceling one membership made a splash. Canceling the club's sense of invincibility? That would start a war. So I dug deeper. I slipped into file rooms, befriended the IT intern who handled backup servers, pieced together old emails and financial records that had been forgotten but not deleted. The deeper I dug, the uglier it got. Bribes, hush money, misuse of charity funds, secrets that would not survive daylight. By the time I was done, I had enough to sink half the board. I kept it all tucked away on a flash drive I wore around my neck like a talisman. All I needed now was the right moment to use it. And that moment came sooner than I expected. One Friday evening, I walked into the club's library, a dark, wood-paneled room where the oldest members liked to pretend they were scholars, reading leather-bound books they never actually opened. There, sitting alone at a corner table, was Mason Quinn. He looked up as I approached, a ghost of a smile flickering over his thin lips. "Leora," he said. "Sit." I obeyed. The smell of old paper and whiskey clung to the air between us. "I know it was you," he said calmly. "Vivian knows too. She's gathering evidence." I didn't flinch. "Evidence of what?" he chuckled. "You're good, I'll give you that. But you've made enemies you can't outrun. I'm offering you a way out." "A way out?" He leaned forward, his eyes glinting. "You rescind whatever you did. Make it right. And we'll pretend this never happened. You can stay, keep your membership, your illusions. Or you can keep pushing and watch everything burn." I smiled. Slowly, I reached for the flash drive around my neck and let it swing between us like a pendulum. "Mason," I said softly, "what if I want to watch it burn?" His eyes darkened. "You're playing a dangerous game." "So are you," I said. "And I'm not alone." He sat back, studying me like I was a new species he couldn't quite name. "What do you want, Leora?" I stood up. "I want them to feel what it's like to be disposable, to know they need my money, and they don't get it." I walked out, my pulse pounding in my throat. Behind me, the library door clicked shut. Mason Quinn was no longer my friend or my mentor. He was my first casualty, and I had 11 more names to go. Dash, 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 ... Cliffhanger. The next morning, a letter was slipped under my door. No name, just a single line scrawled in neat, looping handwriting. "If you keep this up, you won't live to spend that inheritance." The paper felt heavier than its single sentence should allow. I sat on the edge of my bed, the morning sun slanting through my open curtains, turning the words into a dagger made of ink. "If you keep this up, you won't live to spend that inheritance." No signature, no date, just a message so simple it made my hands tremble. I read it again, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less terrifying, something that didn't tighten the air around my throat. But they didn't change. They stayed steady, a threat that pulsed louder than my heartbeat. I thought of my grandmother's name on every check I'd ever signed, the proud look she must have worn when she'd scribbled my name into that will, believing money could buy me safety or at least stability. Money was supposed to be my shield, but now it was a target strapped to my chest. I crumpled the note in my fist and stared at my reflection in the vanity mirror across the room. Leora Sinclair. Youngest member. Architectural prodigy. Generous benefactor. Social climber. Saboteur. And now, marked woman. It would have been so easy to back down right then. To return to the club that morning, find Mason Quinn, hand him the flash drive with trembling fingers, and beg forgiveness. They'd probably let me stay. Maybe they'd even find a neat way to pin the canceled membership on some poor temp in the billing office. They'd brush the whole thing under the rug, as they'd done with so many scandals before. But the image that burned in my mind wasn't Vivian's fury or Mason's pity. It was the chef's tired smile when he finally said, "I'd give anything for one of them to feel scared for once." Or the groundskeeper's quiet, "No one cares what I know, until they have to." I couldn't erase that. And I wouldn't. I stuffed the note into my bedside drawer and grabbed my phone. My fingers hovered over my contacts. I'd never done anything like this before, never tried to pull people together like a general marshalling an army. But fear is a better motivator than hope ever was. And I knew they were afraid now. I called the chef first. He answered on the first ring. "Did you get it too?" he asked before I could even say hello. "What?" He snorted, but there was no humor in it. "A note." Same handwriting. Mine said, "Keep your mouth shut if you want to see your kids grow up." My stomach dropped. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, but I'm not shutting up." He paused. "Are you?" "No," I said. "Meet me tonight." The old garden shed. Midnight. He didn't hesitate. "I'll be there. .. By sundown, I'd secured 3 more confirmations: the junior golf pro, the event planner, and the groundskeeper. Each had found a letter slipped under their door or tucked into their locker. Threats tailored perfectly to their vulnerabilities. And each one chose to stand with me. As the sun dipped behind Aldridge's endless lawns, I watched the clubhouse windows light up like fireflies trapped behind glass. Inside, the old guard would be swirling brandy, whispering about damage control, planning the next move they thought I'd never see coming. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost ... At midnight, I crept through the hedge-lined path to the abandoned garden shed at the far edge of the club's property. The place had once been the pride of the landscaping team, a tool shed for the topiaries, a potting bench for the seasonal blooms. Now it was a relic: cracked windows, rusted hinges, and secrets thick in the shadows. Inside, a single bulb swung from the ceiling, its light sputtering like it might give up at any moment. The chef was already there, arms crossed, pacing a groove into the dirt floor. The others trickled in, one by one, glancing over their shoulders as if the hedges might part and reveal a cadre of board members ready to pounce. When the groundskeeper, Matteo, slipped through the door last, I closed it behind him and locked the latch. We stood in a circle, the bulb casting our shadows onto the warped walls like giant ghosts. No one spoke for a long moment. The chef, his name was Claude, I reminded myself, not just the chef, was the first to break the silence. "You really stirred the hornet's nest, Leora," he said. "They don't scare easy. But you scared them." "I didn't mean for it to get this far," I admitted, "but now they're showing us who they really are. And they're afraid of what we could do." The event planner, Renata, shifted from foot to foot. Her eyes were red and I could tell she hadn't slept. "But what can we do? They run everything. If they blackball us, we're done. Aldridge isn't just a club. It's connections. It's our jobs, our reputations." Matteo spoke up, his voice rough. "We don't have reputations to protect. They never gave us that. We do the work, they take the credit." He looked at me. "You have the power, Leora. The rest of us, we're just your leverage." He wasn't wrong. I felt the weight of that like a boulder on my spine. But I straightened up. "You're not leverage. You're the ones who know where the skeletons are buried. They think they're untouchable because they have money. But the truth is, they've buried themselves in secrets. And secrets can ruin even the richest people." I pulled the flash drive from around my neck and set it on the rickety potting bench in the center of our circle. "Everything I found is on here. Financial records, bribes, backdoor deals, evidence they've siphoned charity money to pay off private debts. Enough to get every local paper frothing at the mouth. But I can't drop this bomb alone." Claude stepped forward, his eyes glittering. "So we go public?" Renata's voice trembled. "They'll destroy us." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe we make them an offer. Either they fix this club, make it fair, transparent, equal, or we drag every last dirty dollar into the daylight. We don't want their money. We want our dignity. We want them to need us more than we need them." Matteo looked at each of us in turn. "How do we know they won't just bury us instead?" I held up the flash drive again, my hand steady. "Because I've made copies, locked away, with instructions to go public if anything happens to me, or to any of you." Claude let out a low whistle. "You really thought of everything." "Not everything," I said softly, "but enough to scare them." For the first time that night, a flicker of hope sparked in the shed. ... The next day was a performance. I strolled into the country club as if I hadn't slept in 2 days. as if my pockets weren't lined with dynamite ready to blow the board's lies sky high. I wore my best silk blouse, the one that made me look like an heiress rather than a schemer. I smiled at the front desk, ordered a latte from the cafe, and sauntered onto the patio where the senior members gathered every morning like buzzards around a carcass. Vivian was there, sunglasses on, lips curled in that trademark condescension. Mason sat beside her, staring straight ahead like he didn't see me at all. Declan paced behind them, phone glued to his ear, barking in that same clipped tone he always used when he felt cornered. When I approached, Vivian lowered her glasses just enough to look me in the eyes. "Brave of you to show your face," she said, her words dripping poison. I set my latte down on their table with a gentle thunk. "We need to talk. All of us." Mason snorted. "About what? You think you have leverage now? You're out of your depth, Leora." I leaned in so close they could smell the hint of rosewater on my collarbone. "I know everything. The hidden donations. The hush money. The siphoned charity funds. All of it. And I'm not alone anymore." Declan's voice cracked over his phone call. He turned to me, his eyes narrow. "You think you're untouchable now? You're a child playing with matches." I smiled. "Matches can burn down an entire forest, Declan." Vivian's mouth twitched, but she didn't smile. "What do you want?" I sat down across from them, crossing my legs like I owned the place. "Simple. You'll announce a full financial review, transparent, by an outside firm. You'll remove the hush clauses from staff contracts. You'll reinstate every member you've blackballed for petty politics. And you'll issue a public statement acknowledging the corruption." Mason laughed so hard he had to wipe tears from his eyes. "You think you can dictate terms to us?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a single white envelope. I slid it across the table. Inside was a copy of the worst of it. Declan's fake charities and Vivian's consulting fees, paid to her own shell companies. Just enough to show them I wasn't bluffing. "Read it," I said, "then decide if you'd rather face the press or work with me." Vivian opened the envelope with trembling fingers. As she read, the blood drained from her face. Declan leaned over her shoulder, his jaw tightening like a vice. Mason just stared at me, his smile gone. "You'll regret this," he whispered. I stood. "Maybe. But so will you, if you don't choose wisely." ... I walked away from that table with my heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst through my ribs. I didn't know if they'd cave. I didn't know if my leverage was enough. But for the first time since I'd stepped into Aldridge's perfect lawns, I felt like the ground was finally shifting under their feet, not mine. That night, I sat by my bedroom window, watching the stars shimmer through the thin veil of city haze. My phone buzzed. Claude, Renata, Matteo, all waiting for my word. All ready to stand beside me. We were a coalition now. A rebellion wrapped in silk and polite smiles, and if they wanted war, they were about to get it. ... Cliffhanger. As I drifted off to sleep, my phone vibrated with a single message from an unknown number. "You think you're safe? Check your bank account in the morning." I didn't sleep at all that night. I kept staring at the last message on my phone. "You think you're safe? Check your bank account in the morning." Asterisk, like it was some kind of code that would reveal its secrets if I read it enough times. By dawn, my head felt heavy with exhaustion, but my pulse was electric with dread. When the sky turned from black to bruised purple, I sat at my desk, logged into my bank's secure portal, and watched the numbers rearrange themselves in front of my eyes. For a few agonizing seconds, I thought I'd typed my password wrong, but no, the page loaded fine. My balance stared back at me, hollow and wrong. My inheritance account, once brimming with 7 figures of my grandmother's careful savings, was drained. 0. No, not 0. Worse. Negative. Frozen. I shoved back from the desk so fast my chair slammed into the wall. I felt like the carpet was quicksand beneath my bare feet. I ran my hand through my hair, trying to make sense of it. This wasn't a late charge or a banking glitch. This was deliberate. Precise. Brutal. They'd hit me where it would hurt the most. My sense of safety. My promise to my grandmother that I'd protect what she left me. They'd reminded me in one click that I wasn't untouchable. I wanted to scream. Instead, I forced myself to breathe. In. Out. My reflection in the window looked like a ghost. But that ghost lifted her chin. Okay, I whispered to myself. So they've made it personal. Dash, 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 dot dot. I called the bank. I demanded answers. I knew the woman on the other end. Ellen, by name. I'd sent her a holiday card every year. Her voice trembled when she told me, "I'm so sorry, Leora. There was a flagged transaction. Something about an unpaid lien against the estate. A retroactive debt claim. The lawyers." "A what?" I barked. "That's impossible. There was no lien. The estate was clean." "I know," Ellen said softly. "I checked the files myself last year. But this came through from a legal firm we've seen before. Very aggressive. They provided documents." "Forged," I snapped. "They're forged." She paused. "I believe you. But it'll take time to fight it. Weeks, maybe months." "I don't have weeks." "I'm sorry, Leora." The line clicked off like a slammed door. Dash, 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 dot, dot. By the time I made it to the club, the sky had turned that unsettling shade of pale gold that made everything look washed out. The world seemed muffled. My mind was screaming, but my footsteps were silent on the marble floors. Claude found me first. He'd been waiting by the back hallway, leaning against the wall like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "You look like hell," he said. "I feel worse." I shot back. He handed me a thermos of coffee. It was too hot, too bitter, but I drank it anyway. "They froze your account?" he asked. "And then some. Retroactive debt. Liens. Legal maneuvers." "They're squeezing you," he said. "They think if they cut off your money, you'll fold." "They might be right," I admitted, staring into the swirling black liquid. "I can't fight them alone, Claude. If they can do this to me, they can do it to you, to all of us." "No," he said, setting his jaw. "They won't touch my kids. They won't touch Renata's family. Mateo's got nothing to lose. They pushed too hard, too fast. Now it's our turn. Dash, 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 dot, dot." That night, we met again in the shed. No more timid glances over our shoulders. No more hoping the club's secrets would protect us. The 5 of us stood together like soldiers planning a siege. "I've got a friend at the Gazette," Renata said. Her voice was still shaky, but her eyes were sharp. "He's hungry for a scandal. If we hand him the files, it'll go public in hours." "But if we pull that trigger, there's no going back," I said. "We have to be ready for them to come for us." Mateo crossed his arms. "They already have. What more can they take?" Claude placed a battered notebook on the bench. "I've been keeping my own records for years. Recipes they stole, hours they didn't pay for, supplies they billed twice. It's all here." I stared at him, my chest tight with something close to gratitude. "You didn't have to." "I did," he cut in. "This is bigger than your inheritance, Leora. Bigger than all of us." We spent hours piecing everything together, matching names to dates, amounts to signatures. By dawn, the shed floor was littered with coffee cups, scribbled notes, half-eaten pastries. The bulb flickered above us like it might give up at any moment, but it didn't. Neither did we. When the first bird started chirping outside, I pulled my hair back, took a deep breath, and looked at my small, tired army. "It's time," I said. "Let's see how they like playing defense." Dash, 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 dot, dot. The next day, Alderidge Club was unrecognizable. Whispers turned to full-throated arguments in the hallways. Board members gathered in corners, like conspirators caught in the open. I caught Declan shouting at Mason in the hallway outside the executive office. Something about damage control and media leak. I'd given Renata's friend just enough to whet his appetite. The headline hit the Gazette's website at noon. Exclusive: Alderidge Country Club, accused of embezzlement, fraud, and member intimidation. The accompanying photo was a stock image of the club's iconic gates, framed by sunshine and pink roses. So innocent, it made the headline look 10 times worse. By 3, I was called into an, quote, emergency discussion. I found myself sitting alone in the boardroom, staring at a massive oil painting of the club's founders. The faces in the portrait seemed to sneer down at me. Vivian stormed in first. Her hair was immaculate, her pearl necklace glinting like a noose. "You've gone too far," she snapped. "I haven't gone far enough," I shot back. "You think you can scare people into silence forever?" Mason followed, his face grim. "This is extortion, Leora." "No," I said. "This is exposure, and you did it to yourselves." Declan threw a thick manila folder onto the table. "Your inheritance is gone," he hissed. "Your accounts are frozen. We can bury you in court for years." I leaned back in my chair, heart hammering so hard I thought it might leap out of my throat. "You could," I said. "But every day you drag this out, more people talk, more secrets come out. This club doesn't survive that. Neither do you." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Step down, all of you. Full audit. New elections for the board. Staff pay and conditions fixed. You walk away quietly. No more threats, no more games." Mason laughed bitterly. "And if we don't? Then the next file hits the press tomorrow," I said. "And the next one. And the next." We sat there in silence for what felt like forever. Finally, Declan leaned forward, his voice low. "You'll never be one of us." "Good," I said. "I don't want to be." Dash, 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 dot, dot. The following days were chaos. Reporters camped outside the gates, cameras flashing whenever a luxury car pulled in or out. Longtime members canceled brunches, too afraid of being associated with the scandal. Donations dried up. Sponsors withdrew. Inside the club, something miraculous happened. People who'd been invisible for decades finally had a voice. The grounds crew organized. The kitchen staff demanded better hours and pay. The junior members whispered about real elections, real oversight. One night, Claude found me sitting alone in the garden. "You did it," he said, handing me a glass of wine. "We did it," I corrected him. He sat beside me, his shoulders sagging in relief. "You're still broke, you know." I laughed. It came out more like a sob. "Yeah, I'm broke. But you're free," he said. I looked out over the dark lawns, the fountains still burbling like nothing had changed. But everything had. "Yeah," I whispered. "I'm free. Dash, 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 dot, dot." Cliffhanger. Just as I felt the first taste of victory, my phone buzzed. A new message. "You think this is over? You haven't even seen the worst of us yet." The message sat on my phone like a splinter in my mind. "You think this is over? You haven't even seen the worst of us yet." I read it again under the soft pool of my bedside lamp, the shadows of the garden trees flickering across my window. Outside, Alderidge looked so peaceful, a painted portrait of old wealth and quiet lawns. But behind the manicured hedges, the war I'd started was rippling outward in ways I hadn't anticipated. I thought about deleting the message, pretending I hadn't seen it, but the fear settled low in my belly like a stone. I knew them well enough now to know this was no empty threat. I was wide awake when dawn bled into the sky. The sun found me still perched by my window, laptop open, notes scattered around my feet. I felt the walls close in for the first time since this all began. Vivian and her cabal were desperate now. Desperate people make dangerous choices. Dash, 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 dot, dot. By mid-morning, the news vans were gone from the gates. The reporters had gotten their story. Alderidge's corruption was out in the open, but the real fight was happening inside. On the marble floors, behind the closed boardroom doors where they were plotting how to claw back what they'd lost. I made my way to the club alone. Claude had texted that he was running late, something about his daughter's recital. Matteo was working double shifts to keep the gardens presentable for the new inspections. Renato was prepping the event hall for the next charity gala, this time with real transparency. They were busy building the new foundation, and I was the one standing in the ruins. I should have felt triumphant, but all I felt was watched. The locker room was empty when I arrived. I sat on the cushioned bench in front of my usual locker, the air thick with the scent of expensive soaps and fresh laundry. My mind drifted back to that first day. How small I'd felt stepping into this place. How careful I'd been not to scuff the pristine tiles or speak out of turn. Now the silence felt like an ambush. I jumped when the locker door beside me swung open. Sophie Albright stood there, her expression unreadable, her suit jacket hanging off her shoulders like armor she was too tired to wear properly. "You look like you haven't slept," she said. "Neither have you," I shot back. She let out a hollow laugh. "We built this place on secrets. You were just the first one to rip the walls down." I held her gaze. I didn't want it to end like this. "Didn't you?" Sophie asked. "Do you really think you're any different from us now?" I wanted to argue, but her question lodged in my chest like a splinter. Was I different? Or was I just better at playing their game? Sophie pulled a small envelope from her bag and handed it to me. "You'll want to read this before you walk into that board meeting. They're going to offer you a deal." "What kind of deal?" "The kind that sounds like mercy until you realize it's a noose," she said. "Good luck, Leora." She was gone, before I could respond. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. I sat alone in the empty lounge, fingers tracing the club's embossed logo on the flap. When I finally tore it open, the letter inside made my stomach turn. It was a legal agreement. Slick, precise, brimming with enough legalese to drown a lesser person. It offered me reinstatement, protection from further litigation, and the promise to resolve any outstanding financial entanglements. In return, I would disappear. Resign from Aldridge. Sign an NDA so ironclad that if I so much as whispered what I knew, they could ruin me for good. They thought I'd be desperate enough to take it. That after seeing my inheritance frozen, I'd crawl back, tail tucked, grateful for scraps, and for a moment, I wanted to. The exhaustion coiled around my ribs like barbed wire. I could walk away now, let someone else carry the torch. But when I closed my eyes, I saw Claude's tired smile. Matteo's calloused hands. Renata's tears when she'd told me she'd lost every job opportunity she'd ever earned because the board whispered lies about her. I stuffed the letter back into the envelope and tucked it into my bag. I would keep it. Not as a surrender, but as proof. They'd just handed me the evidence I needed. The board meeting was already underway when I walked in. They'd chosen the library this time, less formal than the grand hall, more intimate. The smell of old leather and polished wood hit me like a memory of a place that had never wanted me. Vivian sat at the head of the table, flanked by Declan and Mason. Their eyes tracked me like predators sizing up a wounded deer. "Miss Sinclair," Vivian said, voice syrupy sweet, "thank you for coming." "I'm not here to be polite," I said. "I'm here because you told me you'd talk to my face, not through lawyers." Declan drummed his fingers on the table. "You're in over your head, Leora. Do you know how deep this goes? Do you know who you're really threatening?" "Enlighten me," I shot back. Mason leaned forward, eyes glinting. "You've embarrassed people with far more power than you understand. You think you've won because you made the local papers? You haven't scratched the surface." I forced my hands to stay flat on the table. "Then what do you want from me?" Vivian's smile was a knife. "Take the deal. Sign the agreement. Walk away. We'll fix your finances. You can move somewhere sunny. Start over." "And pretend none of this ever happened?" I asked. "No one will believe you anyway," Mason sneered. Your word against decades of legacy. I let the silence hang between us. Then I pulled the letter from my bag and dropped it on the table. You just handed me the proof. You've admitted you'd rather pay me off than let the truth come out. Vivian's nostrils flared. You think that will hold up? I think it'll scare the hell out of the next journalist I send it to, I said. And the next. And the next. Mason pushed back from the table, his chair scraping the floor like a warning. You won't win this, Leora. I stood, gathering the scattered courage that felt paper-thin, but still enough. I already have. ... Outside the library, I found Claude waiting for me, arms folded across his chest. How bad? Bad, I admitted. But they're more scared than we are now. Good, he said. Fear makes people sloppy. How's Renata? I asked. She's meeting with the new sponsors tonight. She's terrified. But she's holding her ground. And Matteo? Claude hesitated. He got a message last night. They're threatening his family back home. I felt my vision blur with rage. They won't stop. Not until they've broken us. Then we don't let them, Claude said. ... That night, I returned to my flat and sat at my desk for hours. I dug through every old email, every dusty folder my grandmother had ever saved. I found the old correspondences, proof that there were never any liens, that the debt they used to freeze my account was fiction. I forwarded copies to my lawyer, then made another backup and dropped it in a safe deposit box. If they wanted to drag me to court, they'd have to drag my grandmother's ghost with me. At 2 a.m, my phone pinged. It was Renata. Asterisk. They're trying to buy out the event sponsors. They're telling them we're unstable. Asterisk. Asterisk. Let them. Asterisk. I texted back. Asterisk. People hate instability. But they hate bullies more. We'll show them receipts. Asterisk. We didn't sleep. We drafted statements, we gathered the rest of our evidence, and by sunrise, the Gazette had it all. This time, they didn't bury it in the local section. This time, it was the front page. Asterisk board sabotage. New evidence reveals extortion attempts at Alderidge. Asterisk. ... When I walked into the club that afternoon, the tension was like static in the air. Half the members refused to meet my eyes. The other half gave me nods so small they were barely gestures, but they meant everything. One young woman, a junior member I'd never spoken to, slipped a note into my hand as we passed in the hallway. Asterisk. Keep going. They've kept us quiet too long. Asterisk. I folded that note into my pocket and carried it like armor. ... I found Vivian in the garden, standing alone near the marble fountain. The spring air smelled like fresh-cut grass and the beginning of rain. She didn't look up when I stopped beside her. You don't know what you've done, she said quietly. You've destroyed the only thing that made this place special. You mean the secrets? I asked. The lies? She turned to me, eyes glassy. We kept it safe. You tore it down. No, I said. I made space for something better. Vivian looked so small then. Not the Queen of Alderidge, but an aging woman who'd bet everything on power she couldn't keep. I walked away before she could see the pity on my face. ... By evening, the board's lawyers called an emergency session. The old guard was caving. Mason didn't show. Declan refused to sign the resignation papers. But the others fell like dominoes. One by one, they stepped down. One by one, they admitted their sins. Some publicly, some in private whispers, hoping to salvage what little dignity they had left. We didn't celebrate yet. We didn't even smile. Because we knew this fight was far from over. ... When I got home that night, my phone buzzed again. It was an anonymous message. Asterisk. You think we're gone? Look under your car before you start it. Asterisk. My hands went cold. I ran to my window, peered down at my parking spot. Nothing looked different. But dread pulsed through me. I called the police. I called Claude. I called Renata. Claude showed up before the police did, his old truck rumbling into the driveway like a promise. "They're trying to scare you," he said. "It's all they have left." "What if it's not?" I whispered. He squeezed my shoulder. "Then we stand together. We see this through. Dash, 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 dot dot." We stood in my living room, staring out at the streetlights flickering like distant beacons. Tomorrow, we'd walk back into Alderidge again. Tomorrow, we'd face whatever shadow they threw at us next. I felt the fear settle into my bones, but underneath it, something stronger burned, a spark that no threat could snuff out. They thought they could buy my silence. They thought they could take everything from me, but they'd forgotten the most dangerous thing of all. When you have nothing left to lose, you have nothing left to fear. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. The photograph felt like an open grave in my hands. My grandmother's headstone, so familiar, was wreathed in fresh white lilies, her favorite, the ones she used to grow in cracked clay pots on the windowsill when money was tight. But it wasn't the flowers that made my fingers tremble. It was the note, taped to the back of the glossy photo. "Stay silent, or she won't rest in peace." I read it 3 times, hoping the words would soften, turn into something less vile. But they didn't. The meaning was clear. They were telling me they could dig up the past, literally, if I didn't shut my mouth. For a moment, I wanted to crumble, to throw the photo in the fireplace and pretend none of this was happening. I wanted to run back to the days when my grandmother's money felt like a promise that I'd never be small, never be powerless again. But that dream was buried too. And standing over its grave were the same people who had built Alderidge like a fortress for their secrets. Dash 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 dot dot. I called Claude first. His voice cracked with fury when he heard what they'd done. "This is sick," he growled. "This is beyond games. We need the police." "No," I said, pacing my living room like a caged animal. "The police will take a statement and shrug. These people fund half the local government. They'll bury it under paperwork and hush-hush favors. So, what do you want to do?" "We dig back," I said. "We show them they're not the only ones who can unearth ghosts." Dash 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 dot dot. We met at the garden shed again, our little war room with its creaking door and the bulb that flickered as if it were too scared to burn steadily. Renata was already there when I arrived, her eyes swollen, but blazing with the same defiance that had kept her upright for months now. Matteo leaned against the back wall, arms folded, eyes scanning the shadows outside, like he expected someone to jump through the hedge at any moment. "They threatened your grandmother's grave," Renata whispered, like saying it too loud would make it more real. I nodded. "And they won't stop there. They think grief makes me soft." "It makes you dangerous," Matteo said. "That's why they're afraid." Claude dropped a stack of printouts onto the potting bench. "I've been digging," he said. "And you were right, Leora. It goes deeper than Alderidge. These same board members own shell companies all over the county. Fake charities, real estate flips that launder money, donations that disappear into offshore accounts. I flipped through the pages, each transaction like a bone unearthed from rotten soil. "We leak this," I said. "All of it. It'll blow back on us," Renata said. "They'll sue. They'll drag us through every court in the state." "Good," I said. "Let them. I want them so busy defending themselves they can't lay a finger on any of us." Dash 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 dot dot. That night I drove out to the cemetery alone. I needed to see it with my own eyes, to feel the soil under my boots, to remind myself that my grandmother wasn't just a pawn in their blackmail game. The graveyard was quiet except for the wind whispering through the oaks. Her headstone looked the same as it always had, simple granite, her name etched with a dignity she'd never asked for in life but always deserved. I knelt by the fresh lilies, tracing the letters with my fingertips. "I'm so sorry," I whispered into the cold night air. "But they can't scare me away. Not now." When I stood, I found a small slip of paper tucked under one of the flowers. "The roots run deeper than you think." That was all it said. No signature. But I knew. They were reminding me. "We know you're here. We're watching every step you take." Dash 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 dot dot. The next day, the leak hit. Renata's contact at the Gazette didn't hold back this time. Front page, full spread. Network of shell companies tied to Aldridge board members. Millions missing from local charities. I sat in Claude's kitchen while the article spread like wildfire. He paced behind me, phone buzzing every few seconds. Calls from sponsors. Staff. Even junior members who'd once looked down on us now texted him words of support, offers to testify if it came to that. But under the buzz was something else. Fear. We'd crossed another line, and we all knew what that meant. If they come for you again, Claude said, they'll come harder. They already have, I said, showing him the photo. They're not even pretending to be civilized anymore. He read the note, his jaw tightening like a vice. Then it's time to end this. ... We called an emergency staff meeting. No more whispers in the garden shed. No more secrets traded behind the hedges. This time we filled the old event hall, lights blazing, every folding chair occupied by someone who'd once been told they didn't matter. Kitchen staff, groundskeepers, young assistants. Even the junior members who'd watched from the sidelines came to stand at the back, arms crossed, eyes wide. I stood at the front with Claude, Renata, and Matteo flanking me like sentinels. I held up the photo. This is what they think of us, I said. They think our families are bargaining chips. Our dead are leverage. Our fear is currency. A murmur rippled through the hall. No one looked away. I don't want to be part of a club that uses threats to hold its walls together. Do you? I asked. Heads shook. Fists clenched. It felt like a storm building under a copper roof. Then we finish what we started, I said. We demand new leadership, real elections, transparency, protections for every staff member, every junior member, every donor. And we make sure this place is never their private playground again. Claude stepped forward, voice booming. If they fire us, they fire all of us. They can't replace us all. If they threaten one of us, they threaten everyone. Someone at the back started to clap. It spread like fire. By the time the echo died down, the old Aldridge was already gone. ... We drafted a manifesto that night. Matteo called it the Garden Accord, a nod to the shed where it all began. We printed it on thick paper and taped it to the front gates of the club at dawn, so every smug board member would have to see it when they arrived in their black cars and silk ties. We demanded elections within 30 days. An independent audit. Legal protections for whistleblowers. A third-party oversight committee for every charitable donation. And a public apology for every family they'd ever threatened. We gave them 72 hours to respond. ... Vivian came for me herself this time. I was alone in the ladies' lounge when she stepped in, her heels clicking across the marble floor like gunshots. She looked more ghost than queen now, her eyes hollow, her skin drawn tight over her bones. You think you've won, she said, standing so close I could see the tremble in her hands. But you don't understand what you've unleashed. Then enlighten me, I said. She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that scraped the inside of my skull. You think Aldridge was the top of the pyramid? It's the bottom rung. The people you've exposed don't lose. They erase problems like you. Try, I said, my voice ice. Do it. And every file, every photo, every ledger hits the national press by morning. You think the local papers hurt? Wait until you see what a real spotlight feels like. Vivian's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. For a moment, I saw something flicker behind them. Fear, maybe even regret. But it vanished under the steel mask she'd worn for decades. You've made powerful enemies, Leora, and they never forget. Neither do I said. ... When she was gone, I sank onto the velvet bench, my legs finally giving out. I let my breath shake through me in ragged waves. I knew this wasn't over. They'd keep coming, like weeds pushing through concrete. But for once, I didn't feel alone. When I stepped outside, the staff were waiting. Claude clapped me on the back. Renata took my hand in hers. Matteo handed me a mug of coffee so strong it burned my tongue. I drank it anyway. They're running out of moves, Claude said. Or they're saving the worst for last, I whispered. ... Late that night, I sat at my grandmother's old roll-top desk, the photo of her grave propped beside my laptop. I stared at the blank email draft on my screen, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. When my phone buzzed, I jumped. It was Renata. A single line. They're meeting tonight. The real power. Off the books. Want to crash it? I typed back. Where? A second later, her reply. The old wine cellar. Midnight. I shut my laptop, tucked the photo into my coat pocket, and grabbed my car keys. If they wanted to bury me, they'd have to face me first. .. Cliffhanger. I pushed open the cellar door at midnight and found not just the board, but faces I'd never seen before. Strangers in tailored suits. And at the head of the table, someone who said my name like they'd known me my entire life. Leora, we've been waiting for you. The cellar smelled like old oak and secrets. A chill ran down my arms as I stepped inside, my shoes clicking on the worn stone floor. They'd lit the space with a few standing lamps, casting long shadows across dusty wine racks and barrels older than my grandmother's entire lifetime. I'd expected the usual suspects. Vivian with her diamond smile dulled by fear, Declan with his bark worse than his bite, Mason brooding in the corner. But the men and women at this table were strangers. Their suits looked more like armor than fashion. Their faces were carved from stone, each pair of eyes tracking me with the same cold interest one might give a lab rat before the experiment began. And at the head of the table sat a woman I'd never seen before. Her hair was pinned back in an elegant twist, her pearls gleaming against a midnight blue suit. She didn't look at me the way Vivian did, like prey to be cornered. She looked at me like a puzzle piece she'd finally found. Leora Sinclair, she said. Her voice was low, unhurried. You've caused quite a stir. I glanced around the table, my heart pounding. Who are you? Vivian sat 2 seats down from her, eyes downcast. Declan wouldn't even meet my gaze. Mason's hands were folded neatly on the table, but his knuckles were white. The woman leaned back, a faint smile playing on her lips. I'm someone who believed you'd be smarter than this. Smart enough not to sign your NDA, I shot back. Smart enough not to back down when you threatened my family's grave. A murmur rolled around the table like a gust of wind through dry leaves. The woman raised one hand and the room fell silent. You're fighting shadows, Leora. Alderidge was never just a country club, it's a conduit. A safe, if you will, for people who prefer their business out of sight. Blackmail, hush money, dirty charity deals? I asked, my voice echoing off the stone. Your business is rotting from the inside. Her smile didn't waver. You think you've seen the rot. You haven't even touched the walls yet. A man to her left, gray-haired, eyes sharp as ice, cleared his throat. Your grandmother was loyal. She knew the value of silence. I felt my hands curl into fists. Don't you dare talk about her. She helped build the trust that funded Alderidge, the man continued, ignoring me. A nest egg, they called it, to keep the right people in power and the wrong people at the gates. She made her peace with it. That's a lie. Is it? The woman leaned forward, folding her hands like a queen entertaining a court jester. Did you ever ask her where the money came from, Leora? How a single mother, widowed young, managed to amass the kind of capital that buys a seat at this table? She worked every day of her life, I shot back. She saved. She sacrificed. She did, the woman agreed. But she also made deals. She took money to keep secrets buried. Your inheritance was hush money, just like all of ours. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to call her a liar, a parasite. But the room was so quiet I could hear my heartbeat ricocheting off the stone walls. Why tell me this? I asked, voice raw. Why show me your hand? The woman's smile finally faded. Because I want you to stop before you burn us all down. You've proven your point. You're clever. You're bold. You're stubborn. But this, she gestured at the files I'd leaked. The manifesto on the club gates. The headlines that had rocked our small world. This is child's play compared to what you're poking at now. Declan finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot. His voice hoarse. They'll bury you, Leora. Not with lawyers or lawsuits. With rumors that destroy your name, your career, your friends. You'll be radioactive. No firm will touch you. I'm already radioactive, I said. You think you've lost everything, the woman said. But you haven't, not yet. A cold hush fell over the table. The man beside her slid a slim folder across the wood. Open it. I hesitated. My fingers hovered over the worn leather edges. When I cracked it open, my stomach lurched. Photos. Grainy black and white surveillance stills of me at the garden shed, passing files to Renata, hugging Claude's kids after practice, Mateo loading boxes into my car. Threatening my friends now? I spat. Protecting our own, the woman said. You can walk away, Leora. Tonight. Sign the papers. Disappear. Live quietly on what's left of your inheritance. It's gone, I hissed. You took it. Your grandmother had more than one account, she said softly. We could unfreeze them. Or not. Vivian finally spoke, her voice like a ghost of the queen she used to be. Take it, Leora. You can't win. She's already won, Mason said suddenly, his voice flat but oddly reverent. They're just too blind to see it. The woman turned her stare on him. Quiet. Mason shrugged. She did what none of us ever dared. She broke the lock on this place. She showed them the rot. I stood straighter, my legs trembling. You can take my money. You can shred my reputation. But you can't kill the story now. It's out there. And people are watching. They'll forget, the gray-haired man said. They always do. Not this time, I said. Because I won't let them. ... When I left that cellar, my knees nearly buckled on the stone steps. I stumbled out into the crisp night, the wind carrying the distant hush of the club's fountains, and the ghost of my grandmother's voice in my ear. Stand up. Keep your head high. They can't touch you if you don't kneel. I didn't drive home. I went straight to Claude's flat. He opened the door in his pajamas, hair sticking up in wild tufts. He didn't ask questions, just let me inside. Poured me tea so strong it made my eyes water. What happened? He asked finally. I told him everything. About the woman, the folder, the photos, the threat that this would never end if I didn't sign my silence away. When I finished, Claude sat back, his eyes shining with fury. They think money is the only currency, he said. But people, real people, are worth more than all their dirty secrets combined. I pressed my palms to my eyes, fighting the tears. They say my grandmother made deals, took hush money. Maybe she did, he said. Doesn't make what you're doing any less right, doesn't make you her. I let out a shaky breath. They're going to ruin me, Claude. Then we make it worth it, he said. ... Is it? The woman leaned forward, folding her hands like a queen entertaining a court jester. Did you ever ask her where the money came from, Leora? How a single mother, widowed young, managed to amass the kind of capital that buys a seat at this table? She worked every day of her life, I shot back. She saved. She sacrificed. She did, the woman agreed. But she also made deals. She took money to keep secrets buried. Your inheritance was hush money, just like all of ours. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to call her a liar, a parasite. But the room was so quiet I could hear my heartbeat ricocheting off the stone walls. Why tell me this? I asked, voice raw. Why show me your hand? The woman's smile finally faded. Because I want you to stop before you burn us all down. You've proven your point. You're clever. You're bold. You're stubborn. But this, she gestured at the files I'd leaked, the manifesto on the club gates, the headlines that had rocked our small world. This is child's play compared to what you're poking at now. Declan finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice hoarse. They'll bury you, Leora. Not with lawyers or lawsuits. With rumors that destroy your name, your career, your friends. You'll be radioactive. No firm will touch you. I'm already radioactive, I said. You think you've lost everything, the woman said. But you haven't. Not yet. A cold hush fell over the table. The man beside her slid a slim folder across the wood. "Open it." I hesitated. My fingers hovered over the worn leather edges. When I cracked it open, my stomach lurched. Photos. Grainy black and white surveillance stills of me at the garden shed, passing files to Renata, hugging Claude's kids after practice, Matteo loading boxes into my car. Threatening my friends now? I spat. Protecting our own, the woman said. You can walk away, Leora. Tonight. Sign the papers. Disappear. Live quietly on what's left of your inheritance. It's gone, I hissed. You took it. Your grandmother had more than one account, she said softly. We could unfreeze them. Or not. Vivian finally spoke, her voice like a ghost of the queen she used to be. Take it, Leora. You can't win. She's already won, Mason said suddenly, his voice flat but oddly reverent. They're just too blind to see it. The woman turned her stare on him. Quiet. Mason shrugged. She did what none of us ever dared. She broke the lock on this place. She showed them the rot. I stood straighter, my legs trembling. You can take my money. You can shred my reputation. But you can't kill the story now. It's out there. And people are watching. They'll forget, the gray-haired man said. They always do. Not this time, I said. Because I won't let them. ... When I left that cellar, my knees nearly buckled on the stone steps. I stumbled out into the crisp night, the wind carrying the distant hush of the club's fountains, and the ghost of my grandmother's voice in my ear. Stand up. Keep your head high. They can't touch you if you don't kneel. I didn't drive home. I went straight to Claude's flat. He opened the door in his pajamas, hair sticking up in wild tufts. He didn't ask questions, just let me inside. Poured me tea so strong it made my eyes water. What happened? He asked finally. I told him everything. About the woman, the folder, the photos, the threat that this would never end if I didn't sign my silence away. When I finished, Claude sat back, his eyes shining with fury. They think money is the only currency, he said. But people, real people, are worth more than all their dirty secrets combined. I pressed my palms to my eyes, fighting the tears. They say my grandmother made deals, took hush money. Maybe she did, he said. Doesn't make what you're doing any less right, doesn't make you her. I let out a shaky breath. They're going to ruin me, Claude. Then we make it worth it, he said. ... The next morning, the garden shed was crowded. Renata showed up with her laptop, her hair pulled into a tight bun that made her look like a general. Matteo brought fresh files, ledgers he'd swiped from the groundskeeping office. Claude paced behind us like a guard dog. They know everything, I said. They have eyes everywhere. Renata didn't flinch. Then let them watch. The more we do out in the open, the less they can twist it behind our backs. We drafted statements. We pulled old club records, lining up inconsistencies. We found names. People like my grandmother, small donors turned big benefactors who'd signed their silence away for a taste of Aldridge's promises. And when the files were ready, we didn't go to the Gazette. We went bigger, national, international. We sent it to 3 outlets at once, each with a kill switch. If one got cold feet, the other 2 would run it. The leak was unstoppable. ... By nightfall, I was on my couch, TV flickering with pundits and news anchors trying to make sense of the rotting underbelly of Aldridge. They called it the Lilly Trust Scandal, a pretty name for a filthy secret. Vivian was cornered outside her townhouse by reporters. Declan issued a statement so bland it might as well have been written in invisible ink. Mason disappeared altogether. And me? I sat there in my grandmother's old cardigan, phone buzzing with calls I ignored. Support, threats, offers, demands. But one message stood out. An anonymous number, just like before. Asterisk. They're coming for you tonight. Leave the house. Asterisk. dash 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 dot dot. I bolted upright. My skin prickled with that same dread I'd felt standing at her grave. I called Claude, but the line went straight to voicemail. I grabbed my bag, the flash drive, the notes, anything that proved the truth. I didn't know where to go, but staying was not an option. I was halfway to the door when a soft knock made my breath catch in my throat. 3 knocks. Slow. Deliberate. I peeked through the peephole, and my heart dropped. Vivian. Alone. No security, no entourage. I opened the door a crack. "What do you want?" She stepped inside like a ghost floating over my threshold. "I came to tell you, they're going to make you disappear, and they'll bury me too if I don't warn you." "So why warn me?" I whispered. Her eyes glistened. "Because you were right. About all of it. About who we became. And I'd rather stand beside you and lose everything than die knowing I did nothing." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a thumb drive. "What is this?" I asked. "The rest of it," she said. "Names, accounts, the final ledger they thought they destroyed." I stared at her, my hands trembling. "Why help me now?" "Because if they're going to ruin us," she said, her voice steady for the first time in months, "then they'll drown with us too. Dash 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 dot dot." Cliffhanger. The lights flickered. Outside, a car engine revved. Vivian's hand tightened around mine. "It's now or never, Leora," she said. "Run, or fight." "What's it going to be?" The car engine outside sounded like a countdown. Vivian's hand trembled in mine, her diamond bracelet cold against my wrist. For a woman who'd once ruled Aldridge with a flick of her smile, she looked impossibly small standing in my dim hallway. I wanted to bolt for the back door, but her eyes held me there, steel beneath the tears. "What do you want from me, Vivian?" I hissed. "Why now?" "Because I'm done pretending," she whispered. "I'm done thinking I can keep my hands clean while they drown us all. They're here to tie up loose ends, Leora. You're the biggest one, and so am I now." Another engine rev. A car door slammed. Footsteps on gravel. Vivian pressed the velvet box into my palm. "You said you wanted to finish this, so finish it. With this." I snapped the box open. The thumb drive was tucked into the silk lining like a poisoned dart. My mind raced. What was on it? Names? Bank accounts? Evidence of deals that went even deeper? "Come with me," I said. "We can disappear. Drop this in the press from somewhere they can't find us." She shook her head. "I'm not built to run. You are." Her eyes flicked to my living room window. "They're coming. Get out the back." I grabbed her shoulders. "Vivian, go," she snapped, her voice sharper than it had sounded in months. "Don't make my last good deed worthless." The front doorknob rattled. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't look back. I snatched my bag, already half-packed from habit, and slipped out the side door, boots crunching on the frost-bitten grass. I could hear voices inside my house now, low and cold. A door slammed. Then a shout. I ran. Dash, 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 dot, dot. I didn't stop until I reached the tree line behind the neighborhood, my lungs burning with the cold. My fingers clenched around the velvet box. Somewhere behind me, Vivian's voice rose, a muffled argument through thin walls. And then silence swallowed it all. I fumbled for my phone. Claude's number. Renata's. Mateo's. Each ring felt like an eternity. Claude answered first, voice rough with sleep. "Leora?" "They're here," I gasped. "They're in my house. Vivian gave me something." "Where are you?" I scanned the dark woods. "I don't know. The trail behind Aldridge Park. I think." "Stay there," he barked. "I'm coming." The line went dead. I curled into the shadows, the thumb drive pressed against my palm like a lifeline. In that moment, my grandmother's voice drifted through my skull again. "Don't kneel. Dash, 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 dot, dot. Claude's headlights found me 20 minutes later. He didn't say a word, just threw open the passenger door. I tumbled in, heart still jackhammering. As we pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of my house, my fortress, lights blazing as shadows moved inside. Gone. Everything I'd built there was gone. ... He drove us to the garden shed, our secret place, our war room. It felt poetic and cruel all at once. Renata and Matteo were already there, blinking against the harsh bulb that always flickered overhead. They took one look at me and knew. "Where's Vivian?" Renata asked. "Inside," I said. "Buying us time. Or, I don't know." Claude took the velvet box, opening it like it might bite him. He held the thumb drive up to the light. "What's on it?" Matteo asked. I shook my head. She said it's the final ledger, the real roots. Renata fired up her laptop, fingers flying across the keys. We all huddled close as she plugged it in, the screen bathing us in its cold glow. It was worse than we'd imagined. Names. Hundreds of them. Not just local donors or old money families, but city officials, real estate developers, corporate backers. Shell companies linked by crooked lines that looped back to Aldridge like a snake swallowing its tail, and payments. So many payments. Illegal property flips. Insider deals that gutted entire neighborhoods. Charity funds laundered into private bank accounts overseas. It was the entire machine. How Aldridge had survived every scandal for decades. How they'd kept people like my grandmother loyal. How they'd bought silence from judges, law firms, even cops. Renata's eyes filled with tears. "This is enough to sink half the city." Matteo slammed his fist into his palm. "So we leak it. All of it. Tonight." But Claude's eyes met mine across the glow of the screen. "Once this is out, there's no safe place left for you, Leora, or for any of us. They'll stop playing games." "They already did," I whispered. "I'm not backing down now. ... We spent hours making copies." Renata's hands shook as she zipped folders, emailed trusted contacts, lined up interviews with national outlets that couldn't be bought off. Claude called old friends in the culinary world, big names, people who'd been snubbed by Aldridge's elite for not being polished enough. Matteo mapped out every staff contact, every junior member who'd shown even a flicker of courage. When the sun cracked the horizon, we sat in a circle in the shed, hollow-eyed but electric with defiance. "Once this goes live," Claude said, "they'll come at you with everything they've got." "Let them," I said. Matteo leaned forward. "Leora, why do you keep fighting? You've lost your money, your house, your name's mud to half the city. Why keep pushing?" I thought of my grandmother's grave. The lilies, the hush money, the way she'd smiled when she'd handed me the first check for my dream. "Because someone has to," I said. "Someone has to break the cycle. ... The leaks hit that night. Headlines in every major outlet, talk shows. Social feeds flooded with infographics, showing exactly how Aldridge's golden facade had been propped up by generations of backroom deals and broken lives. The phone calls started again. Support from strangers, threats from cowards who'd lost their comfortable shadows. I moved from couch to couch, hiding in spare rooms, never sleeping in the same bed twice. Claude's basement. Renata's mother's spare guest room. Matteo's cousin's tiny apartment above a laundromat. But every night, I carried the thumb drive like a relic. ... One afternoon, I sat in an empty cafe miles from Aldridge, nursing burnt coffee and staring at my phone. A message blinked onto my screen. Asterisk. "Meet me. One last time. The garden. Midnight. V. Asterisk. Vivian. Alive. Still moving pieces I didn't know existed. ... The garden behind the club looked like a crime scene. The marble fountain was drained, the hedges ragged where staff had stopped trimming them. The veranda lights flickered like the final breath of a dying star. Vivian waited by the fountain, bundled in a wool coat. When she turned, the shadows carved deep lines into her face. "You did it," she said. "You lit the match." "They'll rebuild," I said. "They always do." She nodded. "Yes. But you've made it so much harder for them. They'll never trust each other again. I stepped closer. Why did you help me, Vivian? Really? She let out a sigh that carried half a lifetime of secrets. Because I was you once. A long time ago. And I failed. I reached for her hand. We don't have to fail now. But she pulled away. I can't run. And I won't live in disgrace. But you can still build something new. Take what you know and make it count. What will you do? I asked. She looked back at the clubhouse, her kingdom turned ruin. Whatever I must. To make this my last sin. A car pulled up at the gates. Headlights swept across the garden. Vivian pressed a scrap of paper into my hand. This is the last name, she said. The one who made us all kneel. I opened it. A name I'd never seen before. Not Declan. Not Mason. Not some board member with a trophy wife and a crumbling alibi. Bigger. The man who'd written the first hush check to my grandmother. The Root. Before I could speak, Vivian slipped away into the shadows. I never saw her again. ... The name on that paper became my new North Star. I called every journalist, every ally, every rival I could find. I offered the final piece of the puzzle to the one paper too big to be bought. In return, I asked for nothing but the promise they'd tell it all. Every ugly root, every broken promise. My name was already ash. Let them burn it alongside his. ... When the final story broke, it didn't come with a bang. It came with a quiet gasp that rolled across the city like a wave. They found accounts tied to offshore corporations. Political donors scrambling for cover. Aldridge's gates swung wide and empty. And me? I stood outside those gates one last time. No fancy blazer. No membership card tucked into my wallet. Just my boots planted in the gravel. My eyes on the red bricks that had once felt like the walls of a castle. You kept your promise, Claude said, stepping up beside me. No, I said, a smile tugging at my tired face. We did. Behind us, staff trickled out, groundskeepers, line cooks, junior members who had never dared raise their voices. They carried boxes of files, memories, scraps of the old Aldridge that could never hurt them again. We walked away together, the dawn breaking over the ruins of their secrets. ... Cliffhanger. That night, I unlocked my phone to find a single message from an unknown number. Asterisk. The roots go deeper? Call me. Mother. Asterisk. The word enough mother burned through my skull like acid. The message sat on my phone screen long after the notification faded. I read it once, then again, each repetition sinking deeper under my skin until it felt like a pulse all its own. The roots go deeper. Call me. Mother. Asterisk. My mother was a ghost in my life. She'd left when I was 5, packed her things in the middle of the night while my grandmother slept in the next room, her silhouette carved by the hallway light as she paused to look at me one last time. I never saw her again. Not a letter. Not a postcard from some distant country. Nothing but the echo of a promise. I'll come back for you. But she never did. Until now. Claude sat across from me at the cafe we'd claimed as neutral ground, our war room when the garden shed felt too exposed. He read the message over my shoulder, a low whistle escaping his lips. What the hell does that mean? I don't know, I said. My voice felt dry, cracked. She hasn't spoken to me in over 20 years. Not a word. Maybe it's not really her, he offered. But the doubt in his voice made my skin crawl. Could be one of them pretending. Then how would they know to sign it that way? She always called herself Mother. Not Mom, not Mama, just Mother. I hated how small I sounded, how that word could cut me open like a blade even after all this time. Renata slid into the booth beside me, Mateo trailing behind her. They looked worse than I felt. Drawn faces, eyes rimmed red from sleepless nights. The leaks had turned Aldridge's name into a national synonym for corruption, but the backlash was no longer just headlines and cold calls. Death threats. Lawsuits. Strangers lurking outside the cafe windows like shadows with teeth. "What's going on?" Renata asked, peering at my phone. "My mother," I said. "She wants me to call." "Now? After all this?" Mateo's voice was rough. "You think she's tied to them?" "I don't know what to think," I whispered. "But if she knows something I don't, I need to hear it." Claude drummed his fingers on the table. "So do it. We'll stay here." I nodded, heart pounding like a drum in my throat. I dialed the number attached to the message. It barely rang once before a voice answered, a voice I'd spent my life pretending I didn't remember. "Leora." Soft, careful, warm as a gun pressed to your ribs. "Mother." My mouth felt like chalk. "What do you want?" She laughed, a brittle, echoing sound that scraped my spine. "Always so suspicious. I suppose I taught you well. Did you send that thumb drive? The final ledger?" "No, sweetheart. That was Vivian's swan song. I always liked her. She had the spine you have now. But there's more. So much more they buried even deeper." "What do you mean?" I hated the quaver in my voice. "Your grandmother didn't just take hush money, Leora. She was part of the original ring that built Aldridge into what it is. They called themselves the Circle. Old families. Old debts. They traded favors and ruin like currency." "No," I whispered. "You're lying." "Am I?" Her voice dropped to a purr. "Ask yourself how a single mother in the 1960s kept a roof over your head, and your mother's head before you. How she bought that first share in Aldridge when the trust was formed. She made deals, Leora, and when she got too old, they needed someone new to carry the name. That was you." "Then why did you leave me?" The question fell out before I could choke it back. Silence. For a heartbeat, I heard the distant clatter of a train passing, the static hum of her end of the line. "Because I didn't want to be you," she said finally. "And I couldn't take you with me without putting a target on your back." My eyes blurred. Renata slipped her hand over mine under the table. I squeezed it like a lifeline. "Why now?" I asked. "Because you've ripped open the circle, but you haven't destroyed it. You've just made them desperate. If you stop now, they'll devour you piece by piece and smile while they do it. So what do you want from me?" My voice turned to steel. "Money? Forgiveness?" She laughed again, sharper this time, almost proud. "I want you to finish what I couldn't. I'm sending you the original black book, the first ledger, the one your grandmother kept locked in her safe under the floorboards. They never found it because I took it when I ran." My head spun. "Where are you?" "Closer than you think." A click, then silence. Dash, 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 dot, dot. The package arrived at Claude's apartment 2 days later. Brown paper. No return address. Just my name printed in blocky, old-fashioned type. Inside, a battered black journal, its spine cracked, the leather soft from years of handling. We gathered around the kitchen table, Renata's laptop ready, Mateo's phone recording everything. Claude flipped the cover open, whistling low under his breath. Names. Dates. Handwritten notes in my grandmother's spidery script. Payments tracked in pounds, dollars, francs. Money that crossed oceans, decades, and too many ruined lives to count. On the last page, scrawled in faded ink, a single line. "This ends with us, or it never ends at all. Asterisk. Dash, 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 dot, dot." The next weeks blurred into each other. We digitized every page. We made backups, stashed in Renata's mother's attic, buried on encrypted servers, mailed to out-of-state friends with instructions. "If you don't hear from us for a week, publish it all." And we went back to the people. Staffers still too afraid to testify. junior members still clinging to the old guard's promises. Local families who'd lost everything when their houses were bulldozed for development. Some spat at us, called us traitors, but more leaned in and listened. And some, just enough, stood up to say, "We'll talk." One night, I lay awake on Claude's sofa, the ledger on my chest like a weight pressing my ribs into the cushions. I dreamed of my mother's voice, my grandmother's grave, Aldridge's red bricks crumbling into dust. When I woke, dawn was barely a promise outside the window. The message haunted me all night. This was never just about Aldridge. It's bigger than you know. Mother, asterisk. I lay awake on the lumpy guest couch in Claude's basement, staring at the low ceiling as the furnace rattled overhead. The ledger, the circle, the threats. All of it had felt so final. I told myself it was over, that exposing the offshore vault was the last domino. But Mother's words crawled under my skin like a secret I'd swallowed but couldn't digest. By dawn, I'd given up pretending to sleep. I sat at Claude's scarred kitchen table, mug of black coffee cooling between my palms. The sunrise through the grimy window did nothing to warm me. The world outside looked the same. Empty street, leafless trees, the distant skyline where people were already rushing to offices they thought kept them safe from monsters like the Circle. I knew better now. Monsters didn't hide in shadows. They built country clubs and wore polished smiles. They buried your future under their money. And even when you dug them up, they left roots that refused to die. Renata stumbled in an hour later, hair still wet from a shower, dark circles under her eyes. "You didn't sleep," she said, stating the obvious. "Neither did you," I shot back. She dropped into the chair across from me, cracking open her laptop. "We have hundreds of emails since the final leak. Staff demanding protection. Former members offering to testify. Lawyers with threats that read like confessions." She paused, eyes searching mine. "But you're somewhere else." I turned my phone so she could read Mother's message. Renata's brows knitted. "Bigger than Aldridge? What does that even mean?" "I don't know," I said. "But if she's right..." "She's the reason you grew up alone," Renata snapped, sharper than I'd ever heard her. "You owe her nothing." "She has the truth," I said. "That's worth more than all the apologies in the world. .. Claude arrived next, carrying 2 bags of greasy breakfast sandwiches that smelled like salvation. Matteo trailed him, a stack of fresh printouts tucked under his arm. We crowded around the table like generals plotting a coup. "The vault is frozen," Claude said. "Every big player from the Circle is lawyering up. The city's crawling with feds and reporters. It's chaos." Matteo laid out the papers. "But look at this." He tapped a map of real estate plots, each marked with red X's. "They own more than Aldridge. This is their fallback. Properties, shell companies, entire blocks waiting to be flipped when the heat dies down." I stared at the map, bile rising in my throat. "They're going to rebuild." "Not if we dig deeper," Matteo said. "We find the next circle before they plant it." Renata closed her laptop with a snap. "Or we walk away, Leora. You did what you promised. You brought them down. You owe them nothing more." The message haunted me all night. This was never just about Aldridge. It's bigger than you know. Mother, asterisk. I lay awake on the lumpy guest couch in Claude's basement, staring at the low ceiling as the furnace rattled overhead. The ledger, the circle, the threats, all of it had felt so final. I told myself it was over, that exposing the offshore vault was the last domino. But Mother's words crawled under my skin like a secret I'd swallowed but couldn't digest. By dawn, I'd given up pretending to sleep. I sat at Claude's scarred kitchen table, mug of black coffee cooling between my palms. The sunrise through the grimy window did nothing to warm me. The world outside looked the same. Empty street, leafless trees, the distant skyline where people were already rushing to offices they thought kept them safe from monsters like the Circle. I knew better now. Monsters didn't hide in shadows. They built country clubs and wore polished smiles. They buried your future under their money. And even when you dug them up, they left roots that refused to die. Dash 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 dot dot. Renata stumbled in an hour later, hair still wet from a shower, dark circles under her eyes. "You didn't sleep," she said, stating the obvious. "Neither did you," I shot back. She dropped into the chair across from me, cracking open her laptop. "We have hundreds of emails since the final leak. Staff demanding protection, former members offering to testify, lawyers with threats that read like confessions." She paused, eyes searching mine. "But you're somewhere else." I turned my phone so she could read Mother's message. Renata's brows knitted. "Bigger than Aldridge? What does that even mean?" "I don't know," I said. "But if she's right..." "She's the reason you grew up alone," Renata snapped, sharper than I'd ever heard her. "You owe her nothing. She has the truth," I said. "That's worth more than all the apologies in the world." Dash 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 dot dot. Claude arrived next, carrying 2 bags of greasy breakfast sandwiches that smelled like salvation. Matteo trailed him, a stack of fresh printouts tucked under his arm. We crowded around the table like generals plotting a coup. "The vault is frozen," Claude said. "Every big player from the circle is lawyering up. The city's crawling with feds and reporters. It's chaos." Matteo laid out the papers. "But look at this." He tapped a map of real estate plots, each marked with red X's. "They own more than Aldridge. This is their fallback. Properties, shell companies, entire blocks waiting to be flipped when the heat dies down." I stared at the map, bile rising in my throat. "They're gonna rebuild." "Not if we dig deeper," Matteo said. "We find the next circle before they plant it." Renata closed her laptop with a snap. "Or we walk away, Leora. You did what you promised. You brought them down. You owe them nothing more." She flinched, but her chin lifted. "I didn't bring you here for forgiveness. I brought you here to see what we're really fighting." She led me down a corridor lined with portraits. Men and women I recognized from old club directories, charity gala programs, the background of my life like wallpaper I'd never noticed peeling. At the end of the hall, she pushed open a door to a study. A desk sat beneath a window, covered in old ledgers, blueprints, and a map peppered with pins. "This is the seed," she said. "This is where they planned everything. Aldridge, the circle, the charities that were never charities." She handed me a folder, my grandmother's handwriting all over it. "These are the original deeds for the trust, the clauses that let them control land, people, entire city blocks. Find the loophole, Leora. Break it. And you starve them forever." My hands shook as I flipped through the brittle pages. "Why now?" I asked. "Why give this up now?" Mother's eyes softened. "Because you never knelt, and maybe that means there's hope for this family yet." Dash 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 dot dot. I didn't sleep that night. I spread the documents across Claude's kitchen table. Renata made coffee so strong it burned my throat. Matteo cross-referenced deeds with the city archives until his eyes bled red. By dawn, we found it. A clause that tied the entire trust to one condition. If the properties were proven to be acquired through fraud, the trust dissolved. No vault, no fallback, no second circle. All we needed was proof. Dash 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 dot dot. Proof came from the unlikeliest source. A junior lawyer, barely out of law school, who'd stumbled onto the hidden transactions while doing grunt work for a big firm. He called me, voice shaking. "They think I don't know what I have, but I do, and if you take them down, maybe I can breathe again." He sent the files that night. Deeds forged, signatures mismatched, land titles flipped like playing cards to launder money for decades. It was enough. Dash 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 dot dot. The lawsuit hit the courthouse steps the next morning, my name on every page. Renata stood beside me, Claude's hand on my shoulder, Matteo guarding the stack of evidence like a sentinel. The press swarmed us, microphones thrust into my face. "Is this the end for Aldridge?" they asked. I smiled. A real one this time. Small, and tired but unbroken. It's the end for anyone who thinks they can bury the truth with money. Dash, 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 dot, dot. We spent weeks fighting. Courtroom battles that blurred together. Headlines that swung between hero and villain so fast I stopped reading them. Mother vanished again, her final words echoing in my ear. Find the seed, kill the tree. Asterisk. When the verdict came, it felt like a whisper rather than a shout. The trust dissolved. The properties reclaimed. The money frozen for good. The circle, stripped of its safety net, crumbled in the daylight they'd always feared. Dash, 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 dot, dot. The night the final ruling came down, I stood alone outside the old gates of Alderidge. The clubhouse was shuttered, its windows dark, the lawn overgrown like the ruin it had always been beneath the roses. Claude, Renata, and Matteo joined me, arms looped through mine. I thought of my grandmother. Of my mother, wherever she was now. Of the girl I'd been when I first walked through these gates believing that money made you safe. You did it, Claude said. No, I said, voice rough but steady. We did. Dash, 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 dot, dot. Cliffhanger. As we turned to leave, my phone buzzed. A final message? From an unknown number that chilled my blood all over again. This circle was only one branch. There are more. Are you ready to dig again? Mother. The night after the final ruling, I lay awake listening to the wind rattle the window of Renata's spare room. I could still taste the victory on my tongue. Sharp, bittersweet, like a shot of whiskey after a funeral. Alderidge was dead. The circle was fractured. And my name would never again be whispered in those marble hallways with that practiced contempt. But Mother's message wouldn't let me sleep. Asterisk. This circle was only one branch. There are more. Are you ready to dig again? Mother. Asterisk. Her words felt like the echo of some ancient curse my grandmother had sown before I was ever born. A seed that had sprouted generations of secrets, watered with hush money and the tears of people too small to fight back. I'd spent my entire life trying to honor her memory, never realizing that maybe, just maybe, the memory itself was poisoned. Dash, 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 dot, dot. By dawn, I was pacing Renata's living room floor. She came out in her robe, hair wild around her shoulders. Another nightmare? She asked, voice thick with sleep. I shook my head, holding up my phone. She says there are more. Renata's eyes narrowed. Of course there are. This kind of rot doesn't grow in one garden, Leora. It spreads. But why me? I asked. Why keep dragging me into it? She walked over, took my shoulders in her hands. Because you're the only one who didn't take the hush money, the only one who didn't kneel. And they hate you for it. I'm so tired, Ren, I whispered. I'm so goddamn tired. Then rest, she said. But don't quit. Dash, 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 dot, dot. Claude showed up an hour later with fresh croissants and a paper bag full of files he'd pulled from the last court records. Matteo trailed behind him, carrying a battered laptop held together with duct tape. You two look like ghosts, Claude said, dropping the bag on the table. Eat. I picked at a pastry, my stomach a knot of acid and fear. What if this never ends? What if every circle I cut down just grows another head? Then we cut again, Matteo said. And again, until they have nowhere left to hide. Dash, dash, dash. We spent that week tracing threads from the final ledger Mother had sent. Names that hadn't come up in the Alderidge vault. Funds that didn't freeze when the trust dissolved. Matteo found a shell company registered to an address that led to an empty lot in a dying part of town. A building that had burned down years ago but still somehow owned property worth millions on paper. Money laundering, Renata said, tapping her screen. Same playbook, new playground. Claude pulled a name from the records, one that made my blood run cold. Recognize this one? Should I? I asked. He was the lawyer who handled the first hush fund for Alderidge. The one your grandmother signed off on. He's still alive, Leora. Still pulling strings. I thought of my grandmother's careful handwriting in the black book, the desperate way she'd tried to balance survival and shame. Where is he now? Head of a new charity fund, Mateo said. Claims it's for restoring historic neighborhoods. But every dollar disappears into, quote, consulting fees and overseas transfers. I closed my eyes, fury blooming behind my eyelids. History repeats, not this time. ... The first step was finding him. The man, Frederick Harrow, was too careful for social media, too old for careless mistakes. But people who thrive in the dark always slip eventually. Renata found him in a gala photo, glass of champagne in hand, surrounded by fresh faces, hoping for a slice of his poisoned pie. Mateo traced the event to an exclusive hotel downtown. Claude booked us a table at the same restaurant that weekend. If he wants to feel untouchable, he said, let him see what happens when the people he thinks are ants start to swarm. ... The dining room was all soft candlelight and hushed laughter, the kind of place where money floated in the air like perfume. Harrow sat near the windows, silver hair combed perfectly, his suit so sharp it could slice diamonds. He was laughing with two young investors who looked too slick, too eager. I felt my heartbeat in my throat as we approached. Leora Sinclair, Harrow said before I could speak, his smile cutting me in half. The little girl who thought she could break the circle. I did, I shot back. You're just what's left clinging to the roots. He chuckled. Oh, darling, you think you've won because Aldridge fell? There are more like me. Always have been. Always will be. Then I'll spend the rest of my life tearing you out by the root, I said. You'll burn out, he said. Or you'll sell out. They all do. We spent that week tracing threads from the final ledger Mother had sent. Names that hadn't come up in the Aldridge vault. Funds that didn't freeze when the trust dissolved. Mateo found a shell company registered to an address that led to an empty lot in a dying part of town. A building that had burned down years ago but still somehow owned property worth millions on paper. Money laundering, Renata said, tapping her screen. Same playbook, new playground. Claude pulled a name from the records, one that made my blood run cold. Recognize this one? Should I? I asked. He was the lawyer who handled the first hush fund for Aldridge. The one your grandmother signed off on. He's still alive, Leora. Still pulling strings. I thought of my grandmother's careful handwriting in the black book, the desperate way she'd tried to balance survival and shame. Where is he now? Head of a new charity fund, Mateo said. Claims it's for restoring historic neighborhoods. But every dollar disappears into, quote, consulting fees and overseas transfers. I closed my eyes, fury blooming behind my eyelids. History repeats, not this time. ... The first step was finding him. The man, Frederick Harrow, was too careful for social media, too old for careless mistakes. But people who thrive in the dark always slip eventually. Renata found him in a gala photo, glass of champagne in hand, surrounded by fresh faces, hoping for a slice of his poisoned pie. Mateo traced the event to an exclusive hotel downtown. Claude booked us a table at the same restaurant that weekend. If he wants to feel untouchable, he said, let him see what happens when the people he thinks are ants start to swarm. ... The dining room was all soft candlelight and hushed laughter, the kind of place where money floated in the air like perfume. Harrow sat near the windows, silver hair combed perfectly, his suit so sharp it could slice diamonds. He was laughing with two young investors who looked too slick, too eager. I felt my heartbeat in my throat as we approached. Leora Sinclair, Harrow said before I could speak, his smile cutting me in half. The little girl who thought she could break the circle. I did, I shot back. You're just what's left clinging to the roots. He chuckled. Oh, darling, you think you've won because Aldridge fell? There are more like me. Always have been. Always will be. Then I'll spend the rest of my life tearing you out by the root, I said. You'll burn out, he said. Or you'll sell out. They all do. Claude stepped forward, hands in his pockets, his voice low and dangerous. She's not alone. Renata's eyes never left Harrow's. You used the same playbook. Same shells. Same stolen families. We're not done. Harrow leaned back in his chair, his grin curdling. You should watch your backs. Revolutions eat their children. Not this one, I said. This one feeds them. ... We left before he could see the tremor in my hands. But the fear didn't weigh me down this time. It ignited something sharp and cold in my bones. Back at Renata's, we opened every file, every deed, every slip of paper my mother's final note had hinted at. By dawn, we had a blueprint of Harrow's empire. Property flips, nonprofit scams, investments that never existed. We leak it? Mateo asked. Not yet, I said. We take it to the families first, the people they stole from. We show them the truth. Then we tear the mask off in public. ... The next month was a blur of community halls and late-night calls. Families who'd lost homes they'd built with their bare hands. Small business owners who'd been bullied out by tax audits while Harrow's charities collected quote-quote donations. We didn't give them empty slogans, we gave them proof. Names. Ledgers. A chance to claw back what was stolen. At first, they looked at me like a ghost. But the more I spoke, the more heads lifted. The more shoulders squared. ... The day the final expose hit, I stood in the same courtroom where Aldridge's trust had crumbled. Harrow sat at the defense table, his hands shaking as lawyers whispered frantic strategies he knew wouldn't save him. I took the stand. Told the story from the beginning. My grandmother's black book, the circle, the hush money, the graves threatened, the roots that refused to die. You think you can win, Harrow hissed at me when the judge called recess. But your mother was smart enough to run. I'm smarter, I said. Because I stayed. ... When the verdict came, the courtroom exploded in gasps and tears. Harrow's entire network, every account, every shell company, every crooked foundation, frozen and handed back to the people it had stolen from. For the first time in my life, the word justice didn't taste like ashes. Outside, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted my name. But the voice that mattered most was the one in my ear. Mother, calling from a burner phone she'd never let me trace. I'm proud of you, she said, more than I ever was of myself. Where are you? I asked, voice cracking. Where I belong. In the shadows, so you don't have to be. ... A week later, I stood at my grandmother's grave. The lilies were fresh, their petals bright against the cold stone. It's done, I said. For you, for me, for everyone you thought you had to keep quiet to protect. But deep down, I knew it was never truly done. There would always be another root, another branch, another serpent trying to grow new scales in the dark. I felt Claude's hand on my shoulder, Renata's arm looping through mine, Mateo standing just behind us like the wall he'd always been. We're ready? I said. Let them try. We won't kneel. Not now. Not ever. ... Cliffhanger. As we turned away from the grave, my phone buzzed one final time. Mother's voice came through, distant and broken by static. I'm sorry. There's one circle left, and this one is inside your blood. Mother's voice crackled through my phone like the last flicker of a dying candle. I'm sorry. There's one circle left, and this one is inside your blood. Asterisk. I stood frozen in the cemetery path, the winter wind whipping through my coat, the headstone at my back like a stone spine bracing me against what I couldn't yet understand. Renata, Claude, and Mateo stared at me, their breath fogging in the air. What does she mean? Renata asked, voice brittle with the fear we'd all tried so hard to bury. I don't know, I whispered. But my gut did. I felt it like a sickness in my bones. Mother's warning wasn't about a ledger or a vault or another country club hiding behind its iron gates. This was something older, deeper, a truth that lived in my blood like a curse. ... We drove back to Claude's flat in silence. I could feel the questions pressing at the back of my mind, but I couldn't voice them yet. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, willing Mother's number to call back. It never did. We've torn down everything they built, Claude said finally. If there's still a root, we find it, and we burn it. How? Mateo asked. We've gone through every ledger, every deed, every old file your mother sent. What else could there be? I thought of my grandmother, her brittle smile when she'd signed her name on papers she knew were poisoned. My mother, leaving in the night like a ghost unspooling from our story. And me, standing here now with nothing left to lose but my name. Bloodlines, I said. If they can't bury the truth, they bury it in family. .. Renata spent days tracing our family tree, sitting cross-legged on Claude's living room floor with printouts spread around her like paper petals. Your grandmother had siblings, she said. 1 sister, 3 brothers. And all of them vanished. Vanished how? I asked. Changed names. Moved away. Married into old money. Look. She held up a record. One of your great-uncles married into the Dervaux family, the same Dervaux that owns half the farmland on the city's edge. They funded the circle's charities for decades. And the sister? I asked. Renata's voice dropped. No record. Just gone. Mateo leaned over her shoulder. A clean slate means someone cleaned it. They kept her off the books for a reason. Which means she knew something, Claude said. And they needed her bloodline buried deeper than the rest. I stared at the family tree pinned to the wall. My grandmother's name was the root, her siblings the branches, me the last stubborn leaf that refused to fall. We find her, I said. We find what she knew. .. The only clue was an old hospital record, half a page, faded almost to invisibility. It listed a name, Martha Sinclair, my grandmother's sister, born in 1928, last seen in 1945, when she was admitted to a private sanatorium on the outskirts of the city. That place doesn't exist anymore, Mateo said, scanning old maps. It's just woods now. No, I said. Places like that don't disappear, they rot underground. .. We drove out at dawn. The city shrank in the rearview mirror until all that remained were empty roads and bare trees clawing at the sky. The sanatorium's address led us to a crumbling stone archway, half swallowed by brambles and snowdrifts. The path beyond it looked like the throat of a beast waiting to swallow us whole. We shouldn't do this alone, Claude muttered. We're not, I said. We have each other. We stepped through the archway, boots crunching on frozen leaves. The building rose out of the mist, a squat ruin of brick and rotted wood, windows like empty eyes. My breath hitched as we crossed the threshold. Inside, the air smelled of mildew and rust. We found old patient files scattered across the floor, names, dates, doses of morphine scribbled in looping handwriting, but none said Martha Sinclair. Then Renata's flashlight found a door half hidden behind a collapsed wall. Which records? The brass plaque was tarnished but legible. We pushed it open together. Inside, a single metal filing cabinet waited in the shadows. .. I pulled open the drawers, papers spilling onto the floor. I scanned them in frantic handfuls. Births, deaths, discharges. Then I found it. Patient number 423, Martha Sinclair. Diagnosis: hysteria. Typical, Renata muttered. Hysteria. They locked up women for being inconvenient. Look, Mateo said, pointing at the bottom of the form. Asterisk. Transferred to House of Renewal. No further record. Asterisk. House of Renewal? Claude repeated. What the hell is that? I remembered Mother's voice. 1 circle left, inside your blood. It was their private asylum, I said, where they kept people who knew too much. .. The House of Renewal was a name no one spoke in the city's polished halls. But old maps gave it away, a sprawling estate buried in the forest. Abandoned now, just like the sanatorium. But the circle had left footprints in the frost. We found it at dusk. A grand manor, its gates rusted open, snow drifted against the stained glass windows. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood and old fear. We split up, flashlights cutting through the dark. I found the room on the top floor, a small cell with iron bars across the window. The bed frame was rusted, the mattress eaten by mice, but the walls were covered in scratches. Words, names, dates, Trust Prost Circle, Trust Circle. And then, blood remembers, secrets rot in the veins, asterisk, dash 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 dot dot. I sank to my knees, tracing the letters with my fingertips. Martha hadn't vanished. She'd been buried alive behind these walls, her mind fraying with the weight of what she knew. And she'd tried to warn me. Decades before I was born, she'd carved her truth into stone. Leora. Renata's voice echoed down the hallway. I scrambled to my feet, flashlight bobbing. In an office down the hall, they'd found it. A safe, hidden behind a false panel. Claude forced it open with a crowbar. Inside, a single notebook wrapped in oilcloth, its pages yellowed with age. I flipped it open, my breath catching. Martha's journal, her handwriting jagged and desperate. She wrote about the circle's earliest days, how the founding families traded children like promises, how they married bloodlines to keep wealth concentrated, how every charity was another lock on the cage, and then the final entry, asterisk, if this book is found, know that the circle lives inside you now. They cannot exist without the blood they planted. Cut them out, root and branch, or they will bloom again in your children. Asterisk. I closed the book, my hands trembling. It's us, I whispered. We're the last lock. If they can keep us quiet, the circle can grow again. Dash 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 dot dot. Back at Claude's flat, we scanned every page. Sent it to every journalist, every lawyer, every survivor who'd stood with us before. This time, it wasn't about hidden accounts or shell companies. It was about telling the world how power had written itself into our DNA. The exposé dropped at dawn. Headlines screamed, "Generational Circle, families trapped in a legacy of silence." Photos of the House of Renewal, Martha's words, carved into peeling plaster, broadcast to every screen that would look. And for the first time, I felt the circle shrivel in the sunlight. Dash 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 dot dot. Mother's last message came that night. I found it waiting on my phone, her voice a whisper through static. Asterisk. You broke the circle, Leora. But remember this. Your name will always tempt those who want to rebuild it. Never kneel, never hush, and never forget. You are your own legacy now. Asterisk. Dash dash dash. Dot dot. I buried Martha's journal beside my grandmother's grave, a stone to mark the end of the roots they thought would bind me forever. Claude stood beside me, Renata and Matteo flanking us like pillars that would never crumble. We left Alderidge's ruins behind, its gates rusted open, its halls empty but echoing with a story no one could bury again. In my pocket, I kept a single slip of paper. One word. Bloom. Not a threat this time, but a promise. The circle was gone, and I would spend the rest of my life making sure nothing so rotten ever took root again. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.